Okay, Kim gave me the thumbs up. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate everyone's flexibility as we had to reschedule last week's program management review, and I'm very glad that you are all able to accommodate us and adjust the schedules. I'm super impressed by the fact that we have such an amazing full house given the rescheduling, so thank you so very much for all of that. Before we get into the meat of today's program management review, we're going to start with a treat for you all, and we're going to start with a video. So Dominic?
As mandated by the U.S. Constitution, America gets one chance each decade to count its population. The census is the foundation of our representative democracy. The next census in 2020 will measure a growing and diverse nation. An undertaking like this requires years of research and testing to ensure an accurate and complete count. That's why planning is already underway to make the next census the most efficient, advanced, and effective in history. Through its ongoing research and testing, the Census Bureau has identified 4 key areas in which investing now will save taxpayers money later in 2020, all without sacrificing quality or accuracy. First, past censuses have required the Census Bureau to walk literally every street in every neighborhood to note every housing unit before Census Day. Now, the Census Bureau is using the Postal Service, aerial imagery, and other sources to base its work on maps and addresses that reflect the absolute latest changes to communities. Second, by using information the public has already provided the government, the Census Bureau plans to further reduce the number of residence visits. For instance, reviewing administrative records will provide the data needed in cases where people do not respond, while at the same time identify vacant housing units that otherwise would be visited by a census taker. Utilizing information like this has the potential to save up to $1.4 billion. Third, the Census Bureau is making responding more convenient by offering secure online, phone, or mail options. This will reduce the number of follow-up door-to-door interviews, the most expensive part of any census, saving an estimated $400 million in taxpayer funds. By taking advantage of the rapid changes in technology since the last census, the agency will improve how it conducts and governs operations. For example, digitally transmitting daily staff assignments and case updates will streamline on-the-ground operations and reporting structures, saving up to $2.5 billion. Finally, the 2020 census will provide a new benchmark for all future censuses. By investing now, the nation will save billions in taxpayer dollars later and ensure a quick, easy, and safe count for every person across the United States.
All right, that was great. Thank you all. I hope you enjoyed that. It was something we prepared around the time that we rolled out the operational plan, and this was our first, it's been on our website, I believe, but this was our first opportunity to share it with you all. So I was glad to have that opportunity to do so. We're very excited to be here today and to talk with you about our progress on the 2020 census and what we've done over the last few months. Before I can do that, we do want to start with, and I have to start, of course, with the required housekeeping items. So if we could turn to that, excellent. So as you know, the Census Bureau continues to try to provide access to this event and information about 2020 census planning to a wide audience of stakeholders. As we do this, it does require a few reminders. The first reminder, and one I always find very helpful to keep fresh in my mind, is that this meeting is being broadcast via a publicly available web broadcast. Really consider all microphones live at all times when you're having sidebar conversations, and be aware of that. The microphones aren't necessarily just the ones that you have in front of you. The room is equipped so that people can hear things. The other reminder is that there are legal requirements that we must follow when we're talking with contractors or potential contractors. And I believe Mike Polensky has just joined us, and he's going to give us a few reminders about that.
So I've given this before to everybody. Since we have government and a lot of contractors and we're webcasting and it's open, just please, we have a couple of RFPs out on the street already, those of you that are familiar with them. There's a couple communications and CQA are already on the street. So just be careful what we talk about. Any publicly available information, that's okay, but no private discussions about specific questions, about specific requirements, or what are we looking for. So keep all those discussions to a halt and don't have those discussions. But publicly available information we can talk about. So you can always talk about that. So other than that, I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you, Mike. A couple of other housekeeping items, if we go back. Thank you, Dominic. The next is, please remember when you're asking questions, please remember to speak directly into the microphone, and please start with your name and your affiliation so that we know who we're talking with and others who are listening also know who's asking the question. I would also encourage for this program management review today for time management, we're going to hold questions to each break. So I believe we have 3 separate time segments of presentations. So we'll take a few brief questions after Shireen and I finish. The next set of questions will be after the next presentation and then so on. So we'll try to limit that to the end of the sections. Next, I would remind you where the restrooms are. There's several in the building, but down the hall and to the right, or you can go all the way down the hall and over to the blue section, and there are additional restrooms there. And then the last would be, just please note the location of our emergency exits. There's one there, and of course we can exit out that way, just in the case that there is some sort of emergency and we do need to evacuate the building. So thank you. Okay, so on to today's agenda. I hope that you all had the chance to visit the systems demonstration that we held before today's program management review. We are really excited to be able to demonstrate and have some hands-on time for all of you with Compass, with Moja, with Centurion, with GUPS, and with Barca. You'll hear a little bit more about all of these technologies throughout the program management review, but really the opportunity for your own live interactions we thought would be really beneficial. If you didn't have a chance to do this before the program management review began, we will have a more extended break today than we have previously, and we'll have our staff back over at the Technology Expo to interact with you then, and I do encourage you to go by and see some of the systems we're showing. This is something that we're beginning to highlight with this program management review, and we hope to continue the practice with our future program management reviews. We might be highlighting the technology like we are today, or maybe highlighting a one-on-one operation, or some additional component of the 2020 census program. The idea here is to provide a bit of a deeper dive into a particular area for those who are interested when it is appropriate for us to do so. As you can tell, we're still working a bit on the format of the program management review, but we believe this approach will allow us to keep the focus of this time on the management of the census, the triple constraints, so to speak. And we can still keep the time to a half-day commitment, honor our respect for our friends on the West Coast by keeping it in the afternoon so they can actively participate as well, and then share as much information as possible. Also, please note that starting with this program management review, we've gone green. So you all have iPads in front of you, and we've eliminated the paper copies of the presentation materials that we used to provide. We do have technical assistants that used to be, they're in the back of the audience. Hi, I see you guys. We do have technical assistants available. So if at any point your iPad isn't functioning the way you think it should, if you just raise your hand, one of our staff will come over to assist you with the devices and bring back up whatever you need to see. All of the information that we previously provided in paper will still, of course, be available on our website, so you will have access to it after the materials as well. In addition to that, you also will have access on our website to all of our recent and cleared monthly status reports, and of course, all of the previous program management review information, and that's all on the 2020 Census website. So just as context, you'll recall that at our last program management review, we discussed the operational plan for the 2020 census. Today's agenda is about and really focused on our operational readiness for our census tests and for the census itself. Since October, we've continued to make tremendous progress towards the 2020 census, towards our 2018 end-to-end test. And as you'll see today and as you'll hear today, we're being very strategic and very deliberate in our approach. We've been studying cost-saving design innovations for the last 4 years. Now we're turning our focus to operationalizing the design to ensure that we'll conduct an accurate census in 2020. This has always been one of our key goals for the census. It's to ensure that we can design a census that accurately and fairly represents everyone. Plans for the 2020 census are right where we need them to be and right where they should be for where we are today. We released our 2020 census operational plan 3 years earlier than we did in 2010. This means that we have the time we need to refine, to test, to build out our detailed operational plans. This will allow us to have the information we need to have for our systems and for implementing our innovations that we're planning to ensure that accurate and complete count for the 2020 census. It gives us the time we need to communicate those plans, to demonstrate the readiness, to demonstrate the technology, and incorporate the feedback that we'll receive from our experts, from Congress, and from the public. As you'll hear today, we've been making decisions, we've been making plans, we've been building out those plans, and we've been laying out and building out those decisions that we laid out for you all in the operational plan itself. A good example of one of those decisions that we recently made is our decision to no longer pursue the use of bring your own device in the 2020 census. You'll note that in the 2014 census test and in the 2015 census test, we tested the feasibility of BYOD during these tests. Through our effort to test it, we learned that there are several challenges that would make BYOD a riskier choice for the 2020 census. For instance, having many different operating systems could make it harder for the Census Bureau to uniformly deliver information to our enumerators in a timely manner. Or we could have difficulties, and we still had difficulties, including how would we reimburse our employees for their data usage, and how would we develop an appropriate acceptable use policy. As we have discussed with many of you, and as we have shared on our website, based on our research, based on our experience with those tests, we have made the decision to move away from the bring your own device and to implement a device as a service strategy for provisioning our equipment to our enumerators. This was based on our early research that we've just discussed and our knowledge that this makes a lot more sense to us from managing our risk perspective. There are many other decisions that we've been making along the way, and as we talk this afternoon, Deirdre will be sharing some of those as well as the process that we're using to make those decisions. But what's most important is that we're making smart use of technology to streamline our operations and to save money while we're seeking outside expertise. We're using technology to make it easier for people to respond to the next census. We're building upon our lessons that we've learned from previous censuses. For this census, we are innovating using existing technology, not inventing new things, but innovating on our existing technology. We're testing early and often, and you've seen that in our 2013 test, our 2014 census test, our 2015 census test, and if you had a chance to visit the Technology Expo, you've seen some illustrations of our technology just before this. As you'll hear today, and as you'll have the opportunity to observe as we continue to field our tests and share our census plans, we are, from a 2020 census perspective, where we need to be today. We have the information that we need to have. We've made the decisions that we've needed to make, and we have a solid plan to accomplishing the rest of our goals. Fundamentally, all of our interests are the same. It's about taking a fair and accurate census that counts everyone once and only once and in the right place. The rest of the day's agenda will include some program management updates, a discussion of our 2020 census readiness. We'll then turn to some operational updates for the second half of our agenda, and then a brief wrap-up. But before I turn it over to Shireen, who's going to start with our program management updates, I would like to take an opportunity to announce many of our new managers to our decennial team, and one additional person that I'd like to introduce who's also part of our team. One of the things you'll see, and I know we've talked a lot about this at previous PMRs, is staffing has been a challenge for us. Again, this quarter, we've made significant progress in filling many of our key positions. So let me begin by announcing some folks. On behalf of the Census Bureau, I think is the best way to put it, and my partner in the IT Directorate, I'd like to introduce to all of you Patty McGuire. Patty is the new program manager for the Census Enterprise Data Collection and Processing Program that we all affectionately call CEDCAP. Patty has tremendous experience and is a longtime colleague of the decennial. So we're very pleased to be able to work with her in this capacity. You're going to hear from Patty a bit more later, and she'll share with you some of her own background and expertise as she introduces herself. But I can honestly say that I'm pleased to have someone from the decennial family continuing to work with us as we build out for the census itself. I'd also like to let you know that Jill O'Brien, who many of you have met previously, has taken a different assignment within the Decennial Directorate. She is now reporting directly to Shireen and serving as a program manager under there, leading an effort for us to evaluate a new program for us, which Autry will briefly talk about when he talks about C-sharps, but a new technology program that we want to use for our onboarding and hiring process, and Jill is the program manager for that effort. Within our Decennial Census Management Division, Rafael Corredo, who is in the back, I see him there, has moved to be the Assistant Division Chief for Operations and Systems Integration. Andrea Brinson, who I didn't see, I see her now, Andrea's over there, has assumed the responsibility for the position that Rafe was previously in, because he assumed the responsibility for the position that Jill was previously in. But Andrea has assumed the responsibility for our schedule position until we fill that position. We also have made selections for branch chiefs, for the chiefs of our automation coordination branch and our customer services branch, only I can't tell you who they are yet because it hasn't cleared. We're expecting it any day now, and we're very excited about the 2 individuals that have accepted these positions. Within our decennial program management office, Adam Bacon, who is not here today, he's off skiing and enjoying the nice snow that we have. He is the new branch chief for our strategic planning and portfolio management office. Latasha Thompson, who I didn't see if she's here. No, I didn't see her in the room. She is our new branch chief for our 2020 program execution branch. And Jean Williams, I didn't see Jean either, but Jean is our new branch chief for our contracts execution branch. Within our decennial communications and coordination office, Tasha Boone, who is up on the podium down at the end, is in the process of transitioning to her formal position. Tasha has been doing us all a favor and serving in an acting capacity as the chief of our decennial communications and coordination office. But Tasha's principal day job is to be the decennial liaison and the decennial representative to our integrated communications contract. And as you'll hear from Tasha and Kendall later, it's time for her to make that transition so that we can encourage and ensure that that contract remains on track. Kim Higginbotham, who's running around keeping us all on track, who's in the back and waving, is going to be stepping up, and she's now our acting office chief for our decennial communications and coordination office. And Kim deserves a ton of credit for her and her staff for getting the program management review scheduled and all of us organized and where we need to be. It's a monumental effort, and you do it wonderfully. Thank you. In our Census Redistricting and Voting Rights Data Office, Colleen Joyce is our new assistant division chief, a new assistant chief of that office. And I believe Colleen is actually out on travel right now with James Whitehorn, who is the chief of that office, conducting a 2020 Census Redistricting Data Program kickoff meeting in Iowa, of all places right now. So yeah, more power to him. Within our Decennial Information Technology Division, Autry has been very busy, and I have a lot of people to introduce to you from that division as well. Jeff Peja, and I believe Jeff is on vacation this week, so I think he's actually in Florida, which might be a good place to be. But Jeff Peja has moved in from the IT Directorate into our Decennial Information Technologies Directorate. Dave Aliff, I'm not sure if he's in the room. Great, and there he is. It's hard to see the back, guys. It's not you, I promise. And he's in the back of the room. He just raised his hand. He is our new Assistant Division Chief for Geographic Production Workflow and IT Services. I don't know how he's going to shorten that to fit on a business card, but that is his area. Sabu Korsapati is sitting right back there next to Dave. He is the Assistant Division Chief for Address Systems. Rob Chestnut, and Rob is in the very last row waving his hand. I'm pleased to announce that Rob Chestnut is the Chief of the Communications and Stakeholder Engagement for our CEDSI program. Rob is also the acting program manager right now for CEDSI as we work to fill that position as well. Tam Suktavoran is raising his hand back there. There he is. He is our new branch chief within our Decennial Information Technology Division for our Address Update Software branch. And Ganeshan Kakan, is he here as well? Nope, no hands are going up. He is our new branch chief for our Data Management and Testing branch. I have 2 more staff announcements. You can see we've been very busy within the directorate, so I'm very pleased about that. Within our Geography division, I'm pleased to announce John Liadis, is he here? Has assumed a new branch chief position in one of our branches there. And Carrie Harritz is also a new branch chief within our Geography division. And I don't see that she is in the room either. So as you can see, we've been actively filling our positions. We're very pleased about that. We are working on many others, but we've made some very, very good progress. With that said, I'm going to take a bit of a break and turn this over to Shireen, who's going to walk us through our program management update. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to start by giving some key highlights since the last PMR, and I'm going to cover items that you're not going to be hearing elsewhere in today's presentation. First off, we're very excited. We've launched our 2020 Memorandum Series. This Memorandum Series is on the website along with our PMR and operational plan materials. This series is very important as it documents significant decisions, actions, and accomplishments related to the 2020 program. And I just wanted to highlight two key deliverables that have been released. First is the release of the 2020 Census Research and Testing Management Plan. That plan was released in December 2015. And secondly, we also released our first detailed operational plan. We're really excited about that. That detailed operational plan covered address canvassing. And as we move through 2016, we will be releasing 12 total detailed operational plans, all by September of this year, and all of them focused on the core activities that we need for 2020. In December, we completed the last production operation for the 2015 National Content Test. That operation was the re-interview component. And then the last key highlight, I guess at least alluded a little bit to it, is that we kicked off our redistricting data program with the first kickoff meeting with official liaisons in December in Atlanta, Georgia. We have more states on deck, and we hope to complete this initial phase by early summer. So let me turn now to the budget. We did receive an appropriation on December 18th. That appropriation provided $1.1 billion for periodic censuses and programs, and it gave the Census Bureau discretion to allocate the funds to the various programs within that appropriation. The enacted amount for the 2020 program is $631.9 million. This level provides good funding to execute our mission-critical items for the 2020 program in 2016. This slide shows our risks for the 2020 program, and for the decennial program, they haven't changed. Funding is still the key top risk and the risk that keeps us awake at night. We not only need funding in fiscal year 2016, but it's critical every year to really ensure that we're very successful with all of the innovations that we're doing for 2020, including the cost savings that we need to realize. So because of all of these things, we still carry that as our very top red risk. The decennial directorate leadership continues to be very focused on human capital management, as we have been for the last few years. With the increase in funding for fiscal year 16, we're going to be hiring more extensively and earlier in the decennial census cycle. We implemented a new policy within the Census Bureau to allow the 2020 program to hire and promote on a term and temporary basis. Doing this is going to help us better manage the workforce given the cyclical nature of the 2020 budget. With this, we are expanding and formalizing our onboarding program for new employees to better integrate them into the mission, culture, and goals of the organization. With our reorganization last year, we have a small group that is focused on workforce planning and execution in the decennial directorate, and they're doing many of these initiatives working within the framework established by our Human Resources Division. Additionally, we're looking to continue our knowledge management and succession management strategies to additional series and additional occupations needed for the 2020 program. We want to identify additional critical and at-risk positions over the next 5 years, primarily in our leadership, technical, and operational areas, and then address any additional competencies for these key positions and provide developmental opportunities and training equally and fairly within the organization to ensure the continuity of the program. And all of this, of course, fits within our priority to broaden our directorate training and development framework. Again, here we're working closely with our Human Resources Division. We've developed a new governance structure for the 2020 program as shown here. In fact, this new governance structure goes into effect next week. And the reason for the new structure is to really better align the 2020 census program with the governance structure for the Census Bureau and to create more transparency and better communication internally. The Portfolio Management Governing Board, or the PMGB, for 2020 activities is elevated to the Associate Director, and it reports directly to the Executive Steering Committee here at the Census Bureau, which is the Director, the Deputy Director, and the Associate Directors. The PMGB includes voting members from all participating census organizations, and by doing this allows us to eliminate the separate decennial leadership group. So the new governance process should be more efficient in terms of decision-making as well. I want to note, too, that our integrated project teams for 2020 will be governed by the PMGB. And while some IPTs exist informally, we're actually in the process of formalizing the IPTs that are working informally, as well as launching new IPTs for the remainder of the 34 operations that were described in our operational plan. The IPTs will be completely set up by the end of March of this year. This slide shows our status of key activities for fiscal year 2016. In coordination with our internal stakeholders, we continue to ensure that the 2020 census integrated schedules identifies all key milestones, critical test dates, and critical systems development and release dates in support of the 2020 census tests and the 2020 census life cycle. I note that we have baselined the 2016 census test that was done in December of 2015, and this week we've baselined the 2016 address canvassing test as well. Based on the requirements for the 2016 census test schedule and the high-level 2020 milestone schedule, we're in the process of developing the schedule for the 2018 end-to-end test. Again, this schedule will be baseline by the end of March as well. And so in terms of the program management updates, that completes all the updates that I have, and I think we want to take any questions, any quick questions for Lisa or myself.
Trish?
Tricia Durr from the Office of Inspector General. Yeah, hi. As far as the decisions that you've been making, and you mentioned in particular the BYOD, are there any that you kind of are sad about in terms of, well, we didn't make it this time, but next time we might, we still want to focus on this? Is there anything that, to diminish risk, you had to kind of give up at this point in time?
Sure, I appreciate the question. And actually, Deirdre's going to talk a bit more about how we're managing the decisions that we've laid out in the operational plan and the decision plan inventory. You know, I think with any program as complex as the decennial census, and with any organization like the Census Bureau, where we're some of us, myself included, are kind of quasi-academic in terms of how we think at times, there's always things we'd like to do. You know, there's always data I'd like to explore. There's always a research question that piques my interest. For the census, though, we have the information that we need to have today, and we've made the decisions that we need to make. Is there more that we'd like to do? There's always more that we'd like to do. So what we're doing with that more is looking toward our 2030 evaluations program and looking toward our 2030 experiments and saying what still holds promise. We're introducing a lot of innovation in the census, and we're very proud of what we are introducing. There's always more that can be done, and we're looking to see what we need to carry forward to that. And the 2030 planning is something that's just recently gotten underway, and it's something that, now that we have funding to begin that effort, it's something that will take on greater emphasis during this year. But in terms of something that makes me sad because we didn't get a chance to do it today, or we made a different decision than what I'd want, I would say no. I'm very pleased with the design that we have. I'm very pleased with the direction that the census is going. We laid out a plan that if we're allowed to execute it, and if we're able to execute it the way we've planned it out, based on the research and testing we've done, we believe it will save taxpayers over $5 billion. We are innovating the way that census and survey taking will occur, not just for the census, but for current surveys, for the Federal Statistical Agency, and who knows who else will want to use some of the technology that we're able to field for the first time. This is changing the way that all of us do work. It's transformational. So am I sad about things? Not really. I'm excited. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us, and we've made what we have to do, and we have a plan to get where we need to be. Other questions? More for Deirdre. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Deirdre Bishop, who is going to start our next session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all this afternoon. Based on today's introduction, I think you can imagine that we've been quite busy since the rollout of our operational plan and our last PMR on October 6th. A little closer. Okay. You've seen variations of this timeline before, but we included it again today to illustrate at this point in the decennial census life cycle, we are now moving from research and testing and into operations and implementation. We've completed significant tests: the 2014 census test, the 2015 optimizing self-response test, the 2015 census test, and the 2015 national content test. We used findings from all of these tests to inform the design of the 2020 census. The operational plan outlines that design and includes 350 decisions that are important to the successful conduct of the census. When we released the plan on October 6th, we had already made 168 data-driven decisions. There are 182 decisions that still need to be decided, 167 of which must be made prior to the 2018 end-to-end test. We've carefully planned the dates for making each of those decisions with the goal of conducting a successful end-to-end test in 2018. The dates for all of these forthcoming decisions are detailed in our operational plan and will be informed by a series of tests over the next few years. With that said, our eye is on the prize being the 2018 census end-to-end test, and ultimately the 2020 census. In order to be sure that we're ready for that end-to-end test, we've conducted a series of detailed planning sessions in November and December. The first set of planning sessions focused on operational readiness. The second set focused on systems readiness. Today, I'm planning to talk about the former, and Autry and Patty will talk about the latter. Let's get started. The goal of the operational planning sessions was to assess the scope of the census tests planned from now through the 2018 end-to-end tests. Our objectives were first to review the 2020 census operational plan decision inventory. Next, to finalize the scope of the 2016 census test, the address canvassing test, the 2017 census test, and finally, to define the scope of the 2018 end-to-end test. We had team members as part of this group representing various directorates and divisions across the agency: the Decennial Directorate, IT Directorate, Field, communications, research and methodology, and our budget division. The team met daily over a 2-week period to discuss our business needs in relation to the timeline and our planned resources. We focused specifically on how to best be prepared for the 18 end-to-end test, and as a result, the 2020 census. The discussions resulted in refinements to our plans for the next few years, aligning our resources, refocusing our priorities, and reducing risk to ensure that we're on track to implement the 18 end-to-end test and ultimately the 2020 census. It's important to mention that each day we invited our associate directors, Lisa from the Decennial Directorate, Harry from our IT Directorate, and Tim Olson from our Field Directorate, to hear about our progress, to answer any questions that we had, to provide feedback, and to approve the decisions that we were making. Every Tuesday, we presented our recommendations to the 2020 Census Executive Steering Committee in order to receive their approval as well. Over the next few slides, I'll talk more specifically about the operational work being conducted each year. As you can see, this slide depicts the 350 decisions outlined in the operational plan. First by type, then by decisions resolved, next by the outstanding decisions, and finally by the planned resolution date. For example, the breakdown of the 168 decisions that we've already made includes 41 IT decisions, 88 non-IT decisions, and 39 decisions that were partially IT and partially non-IT. They had both components. These decisions are not only outlined in the operational plan, but they're also included in a detailed decision inventory that we're using to monitor the key decision dates and to track our progress. However, it's important to mention that there are decisions being made every single day that will contribute to the final outcome of the decisions listed in the operational plan and the decision inventory. So now let's move on to the census tests. I'm happy to report that the 2016 census test has started. To be consistent with the 2020 census, this test will have an April 1st, 2016 Census Day. This is a site test in parts of Los Angeles County, California, and Harris County, Texas, and the maps of the site locations are displayed outside the meeting room today if you'd like to take a look. Each site contains approximately 225,000 housing units. And these sites were selected for a variety of reasons: language diversity, demographic diversity, high vacancy rates, varying levels of internet usage, and multiple locations that represented different time zones. You'll recall that in 2015, we conducted the 2015 Optimizing Self-Response Test in the Savannah, Georgia area to test our operations that were related to self-response. We then conducted the 2015 Census Test in Maricopa County, Arizona, to test our operations related to non-response. The purpose of the 2016 Census Test is to pull the self-response and the non-response follow-up operations into one test. We'll refine the technologies and the methods associated with these significant operations. Just to go over a few of our objectives for each of those areas, for self-response, we will provide non-English support for respondents with limited English proficiency, both in terms of the way we contact those housing units and in our response options. We'll form partnerships and conduct outreach efforts to reach historically hard-to-count populations. We'll refine our methods that we use for real-time non-ID processing, and we'll test new non-roaming character languages, both in Chinese and Korean, in all of our response modes. Our non-response follow-up objectives include finalizing the strategy for the use of administrative records in support of non-response follow-up. We'll test multiple ratios of enumerators to supervisors, even closer, 20-1 in Los Angeles and 30-1 in Houston. We'll implement enhanced procedures for conducting interviews at multi-unit structures and via proxy interview. And we'll continue to refine our use of technology and automation to refine our field operations. For each of the tests discussed today, I'll be showing a diagram that we first shared during the October PMR. This slide depicts the 34 operations of the 2020 census. I'll use this diagram to show operations specifically related to each test. The operations with the dark purple shading represent those that will be the direct focus of this test. The areas in the lighter hue of purple represent the supporting operations. And finally, the operations in olive green are not included in this test. You'll see that for the 2016 census test, the scope includes content and forms design, language services, internet self-response, non-ID processing, non-response follow-up, and response processing. I mentioned that we conducted these detailed planning sessions in November and December. These were the next logical step following the release of our operational plan. We needed to assess our remaining decisions as associated with our resources and our timeline. We wanted to determine if there were decisions that we could make now instead of waiting to help mitigate the risk to the 2020 program and to the successful planning and implementation of the 18 end-to-end test. As a result, we made significant progress on detailing our testing and our operational plan. First, we will move forward with the use of Device as a Service for the 2016 census test and the 2020 census. We have awarded a service contract for the 2016 census test that will acquire mobile devices, both smartphones and tablets, that will determine the best solution for wireless services and handle the device management logistics. We'll release an RFI for Device as a Service in the springtime of this year. As Lisa mentioned, we will not move forward with the use of Bring Your Own Device for the 2016 census test or for the 2020 census. While our testing proved that BYOD is technically feasible, we've identified several significant risks that could impact the 2020 census success. Second, we've decided to move forward with the use of a cascaded training approach for our field staff, meaning that our supervisors will train their staff. We found that the use of master trainers, master trainers, people especially trained in delivering training, did not prove overly effective during the 2015 census test. Additionally, we believe that our field staff will benefit from the face-to-face contact and interaction with their supervisors prior to field work occurring. Third, we will not employ the use of text messaging to motivate self-response to the 2016 census test. However, we will continue to assess the feasibility of using this mechanism to optimize self-response during the 18 end-to-end test and the 2020 census. We will ensure that we're following the law when we are doing so. These were important decisions that will help us direct resources where most needed and help us mitigate the risk to the planning and implementation of the 2018 end-to-end test. Excuse me. Now let's move on to the address canvassing test. We'll conduct this test in the fall of this year. This test will be conducted in 2 contiguous sites. One site where partner data are available and were used to update the master address file. Another site where commercial data are available and were used to update the master address file. This test will include approximately 8,000 blocks in total. The purpose of this test will be to measure the effectiveness of in-office address canvassing in a set of clustered blocks through in-field canvassing. We'll measure the effectiveness of the processes that we're using during in-field address canvassing. We'll measure the effectiveness of partner and commercial data on the quality of the master address file. And finally, we'll understand the implications of moving from assignment area to basic collection unit. Again, we turn to our operations diagram. The focus of this test will be address canvassing with 8 supporting operations. The 2017 census test will also be held using an April 1st, 2017 census day. While the actual sites have yet to be determined, our plans include 2 tribal areas and a large cluster of update enumerate style addresses in blocks that either encompass or are adjacent to those tribal areas. With our operational plan in place, we are focusing this test on operations that we have not yet tested, specifically update enumerate. This works very well because we'll be testing the inclusion of a tribal enrollment question on the census questionnaire during the 2017 census test, and many tribal lands are designated as update enumerate areas. The purpose of this test will be to refine the definition of our type of enumeration area used for update enumerate. We'll test the integration of our operations and systems for update enumerate, and will test the feasibility of collecting tribal enrollment information. The scope of the 2017 census test will include content and forms design, update and enumerate, and you'll also see census questionnaire assistance highlighted in dark purple. As you'll hear from Alexa later this afternoon, this will be the first census test supported by our census questionnaire assistance contract, unlike our other tests which have been supported by our telephone centers in the National Processing Center in Hagerstown and Tucson. Refinements to the scope of the 2017 census test included decisions to first limit further research related to our mailing strategy. We found that mailing a letter to housing units, inviting them to respond to the census via the internet has been very successful. This is known as our internet push strategy. Second, we'll conduct only minor research related to content, again, specifically related to tribal enrollment. And third, we'll conduct smaller scale activities related to group quarters, coverage measurement, remote Alaska, and post-processing, instead of including them as part of the 2017 census test. I should mention that refining the scope of this test helps us reinforce a very important principle that we're trying to instill. We should use consistent processes, procedures, and systems whenever possible. Whether we're conducting address listing as part of the address canvassing operation or as part of update and enumerate, the processes, the procedures, and the systems that we use should be the same. Let's now turn to the 2017 Puerto Rico test. We know the importance of building a strong foundation for the census through the development of the address list and the spatial database. Due to limited resources over the past few years, we've not updated the MapTiger database for Puerto Rico since 2010. We'll now focus on updating the geographic base through fiscal year 2016. We'll use previous deliveries from the United States Postal Service delivery sequence file. Thank you, Neil. We'll use administrative data from our Puerto Rican officials, and we'll use commercial data whenever available. We believe doing this work now, building our geographic foundation, will put us in a much better place to conduct a test of operations and systems in Puerto Rico in 2017 as an independent test. This is a very exciting opportunity for us, as this is the first time a census test will be conducted in Puerto Rico. We have more work to do before determining the actual locations of this test, but it will most likely be in parts of San Juan and adjacent areas that include update and enumerate areas. The purpose of the test will be to determine how the recently updated Puerto Rico master address file supports address listing, self-response, and enumeration, and to develop, test, and deploy our systems in Puerto Rico. As you can see, the scope of operations will include address canvassing, internet self-response, update enumerate, and non-response follow-up. This afternoon, I'll end with the 2018 Census end-to-end test. The purpose of this very important test will be to test and validate the 2020 census operations, procedures, systems, and field infrastructure together to ensure the proper integration and conformance with our functional and non-functional requirements. Coming out of the 2018 end-to-end test, we will have a prototype product of our geographic and data products. Here you'll see that we'll be implementing all of the operations necessary to ensure a successful 2018 end-to-end test. I am confident that we're operationally ready to make those 167 decisions of the remaining 182 prior to the 18 end-to-end test. This afternoon, I've shared our plans from an operational or business perspective. You'll be pleased to hear that we've shared all of this information, including our project-level business requirements and our capability requirements, with our IT counterparts, who are going to be working to ensure that we have the technology and the systems in place to meet our needs. I'd now like to turn it over to Autrey and Patty. They're going to provide more detail about our IT and systems readiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you saw in Deirdre's presentation, We are on schedule to meet our primary goal of conducting a quality census to count everyone once in the right place. We are now moving from small-scale individual tests to larger, more integrated tests. Our systems development work is moving from proof of concept to prototype to actual implementation. This work will continue to our end-to-end test in 2018, where we'll ensure our systems and operations are ready for the actual census in 2020. As you all know, there were questions and concerns about the technology plan for 2020 census. We take those questions and concerns seriously. As part of our systems development, we are not inventing new systems. Rather, we are using off-the-shelf existing technology. We are conducting iterative tests to prove that the systems can indeed be used in the 2020 census. Our engineers and architects have worked very hard to design and architect a system of systems in a framework that allows extensibility, scalability, and interoperability, considering the fact that there are new as well as legacy systems that will support the census test and eventually the 2020 census. And with every test and lessons learned from it, we are strengthening our design and architecture. At this time, I'd like to recognize some of the engineers and architects and the members of our decennial SE&I, Systems Engineering and Integration Office, who are working diligently to make it all happen for us. If you guys can stand, I know you're all in the back there. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause, please. We still have some key decisions to make on some of the IT systems, whether we'll use in-house developed systems or we'll adopt bought solutions and platforms. We have a well-defined process and schedule to make those decisions. And we are working with Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute to guide us and to ensure that the decision-making process is successful. One important point I'd like to make today, which generally goes unmentioned, is that we have an architectural framework that allows for swapping of systems if necessary due to reasons such as new technology innovations and/or operational changes. Now, let me show you the 2020 solution architecture diagram. This is the notional 2020 census solution architecture diagram. Some key points I'd like to make. It depicts a system of systems that integrates the census enterprise data collection and processing components, the SetCap components, as you all know, the blue-colored header background and boxes. It shows how the enterprise solutions will work for decennial census. It categorizes systems in key areas, frame development, data collection, survey design, sample design, etc. And with each key area, it identifies systems by function. It shows you the type of data that is transferred or exchanged, address data, sample data, paradata, response data, etc. More importantly, it shows you how the newly built systems and legacy systems are integrated and how they interact. It is notional, as some of the decisions on what systems will actually be used in the 2020 census are yet to be made. And even if decisions are made, not all systems are available at this time. It is to be noted that the system names are subject to change as well. So let's zoom in. Those that have iPads, please zoom in along with me. So for any census or a survey, design of forms and materials and finalization of what questions will be included is the first step. The SetCap system, Content Metadata System, COMET for short, along with CAFE, the Census Automated Forms Engine, facilitate the design and creation of the questionnaire. So the form or the questionnaire information is then conveyed to Primus and iCADE systems. Primus facilitates web self-response, and iCADE captures the paper responses. Primus is the lightweight version of Centurion for better performance reasons, and iCADE is the integrated computer-assisted data entry. The forms design, along with printable materials, is then conveyed to the print vendor for printing. In 2020, we plan to use a vendor for questionnaire assistance. The vendor will be using primers to capture interview responses, and paper responses are captured by the Automated Tracking Control System, also known as ATAC. And for managing mailing and mail status, we'll use the Intelligent Postal Tracking Service System, also called IPTS. CIRA, or the Census Image Retrieval Application, which is a proven legacy system, will be used for archiving images of paper or internet responses. MAFTIGER, the Master Address File and the Topologically Integrated Geographic Encoding and Referencing System, is a system for managing addresses and spatial data. There are address standardization, matching, and geocoding services, as well as spatial data map services that we support. In-office address canvassing is supported by the same services, also called as Tiger Web Services, and by the application called BARCA, the Block Assessment, Research, and Classification application. I'm sure some of you have seen the demo of the BARCA application today. In case you didn't, you can see the demo which is available for you. Then there is RTNP, the real-time non-ID processing. This is where responses without a census ID are processed by dynamically matching against a copy of the map. We'll also allow self-geocoding by the respondents to a census block. Paper-based non-ID responses are processed using the batch geo services. And for provisioning and managing the administrative records in production, we intend to use PERSYS, the production environment for administrative records staging, integration, and storage. We are building the environment as we speak. For administrative records modeling and to create adaptive design instructions to the multi-mode operational control system, also called as MOX, there is the concurrent analysis and estimation system, CASE, which is currently in the proof of concept stage, and the administrative record and response data access layer, RDAL as it's called, which is in the planning stage. So the control and response data system, CARDS, is where the universe of addresses for a census or a survey is created using address data from the master address file. The augmentation of that data, the master address file data, using data from PERSYS and also sampling using the algorithms defined by our math stats takes place in CARDS. This slide shows you the interaction between multi-mode operational control system and field data collection. MOX is like the traffic cop. It manages census or survey activities with workload distribution and response management by mode to switching modes as necessary. And importantly, provisioning an interface through business rules for our subject matter experts to alter the course of the operations as needed for the purposes of adaptive survey design. The components for the field are the listing and mapping instrument, the LIMA, Mojo, which is a system for field, and a system for field enumeration. Optimization of case assignments takes place as part of Mojo, and you can see the demo of Mojo as well today. You also see the depiction of C#, which stands for Census, Schedule A, Human Resources, and Recruiting Payroll System, C#, which will be the system for managing hiring and payroll. And you see the depiction of e-correspondence for electronic contact of respondents through email, as an example. On this slide, you see UTS, the Unified Tracking System, for Teradata management and its connection to SEM, or the Customer Experience Management, for dashboard and visualization. You also see CARDS post-processing. So there is pre-data collection processing, there is post-data collection processing. And CARDS handles the post-data collection processing for us. And you also see CETSI, Center for Enterprise Data Dissemination Services and Consumer Innovation, and a system for tabulation. SETSci is building a replacement system for the American Fact Finder system. In blue, you see the system's marks: sampling, matching, reviewing, and coding system, which is our quality control system. This slide is a continuation of the solution architecture diagram and shows the enterprise support systems, basically for important functions such as hiring and recruiting, onboarding, training, printing, and asset management. Well, the solution architecture diagram gives you a look ahead for SETCAP and non-SETCAP systems and how they'll be integrated. As you can see, for a successful census, all of these systems under this architectural framework have to work in tandem, scale to the levels needed, be available when needed, be secure, and be usable. And we'll need the infrastructure, either in a cloud or in our data center, to support this architecture and associated systems. We are working very closely with our IT directorate in the design and implementation of such an infrastructure. The test at hand is the 2016 census test. In this test, we'll be deploying internet self-response systems in a Census Bureau provisioned cloud for the first time. We'll also be deploying and using, for the first time in production, SETCAP components of mocks and cards, the multi-mode operational control system, and the control and response data system. These systems will be communicating and transferring data between each other and other systems using the enterprise service bus. So it will be the first time that we will be using the enterprise service bus as well in this 2016 census test. As you heard before from Deirdre, we'll be furnishing smartphones for enumeration using the device as a service method. Both Android and iOS devices will be used in this test. The 2016 census test is giving us an opportunity to try the production use of IT systems in multiple geographic areas and in multiple operations as part of one test for the first time. So a lot of firsts and a lot to learn. As Deirdre mentioned before, we conducted a series of detailed planning sessions in November and December of last year. The first set of planning sessions focused on operational readiness. The second set focused on systems readiness. The objectives of the planning sessions on systems readiness were to review the scope or the scopes for the census tests, including the 2018 end-to-end test, update the project-level business requirements and capability requirements received from all applicable operations of the census test, develop an assessment report on the status of each operation's project-level business requirements and capability requirements, update the assignment of capability requirements to operations and systems supporting those operations, and assess the status of systems fulfillment of assigned capabilities or requirements for the census test. So the planning sessions were conducted with participation from our Decennial Census Management Division, Research and Methodology Directorate, Decennial Statistical Studies Division, Geography Division, my division, Decennial Information Technology Division, Field Directorate, Budget, AdCom, Communications Directorate, Program Management Office, Information Technology Directorate, and the Decennial Communication and Coordination Office. Based on the planning sessions and the assessment of project-level business requirements and capability requirements, I'm happy to report that the requirements by operation needed to finalize the systems of those operations for the 2016 census test have been delivered successfully. As you can see in the slide, it's not only the requirements for the operations which are focus of the test, but also the requirements for operations that are required to support the test. Now, the systems needed by each operation in the 2016 test are either in end-to-end test, including the SETCAP components, or getting ready to be tested as part of the end-to-end test. Now, the end-to-end test, not to be confused with the 2018 end-to-end test or threat test, is what we conduct before deploying the systems in production. This slide shows the solution architecture for the 2016 census test. It is similar to the notional solution architecture diagram we saw before for the 2020 census, but some of the systems we are using are different. The extensible nature of our architecture is demonstrated here. It integrates, as shown before, the SetCap components, cards, mocks, iCade, Mojo, etc., that will be used in the test. It's important to note that there are quite a few systems, as you can imagine, and quite a few teams developing those systems that are responsible for the development and testing of each of the shown subsystems or components. And the 2016 test is bringing all of those components or subsystems together as one integrated system of systems. When we zoom in, you'll see that we are using Compass as our enumeration solution. If you recall on the previous 2020 architecture diagram, I showed you a box titled enumeration. But we know what system we are going to use for enumeration for the 16 test. It's going to be Compass. The demo of Compass is available again today. You see that we are using DAPS, which is the Decennial Applicant, Personnel, and Payroll System, recalled C# for 2020, and ARMS, the Administrative Records Modeling System from DSSD, or Decennial Statistical Studies Division, as CASE, the Concurrent Analysis and Estimation System, is under development. You also notice that there is no electronic contact as part of the 2016 census test. This slide shows you that instead of PERSES, the production environment for administrative records, we are using the interim solution from CARA, the Center for Admin Records Research and Applications. More importantly, we do not have the CQA contract in place yet. So we are using web telephone questionnaire assistance, web computer-assisted telephone interview, and master control systems. This is the second part of the 2016 census test architecture diagram. So I want to reiterate that we are working very hard to integrate all of the systems, either SetCap or non-SetCap. And our current architecture allows for flexibility and extensibility. And we are very eager to deploy all of these systems in the 2016 census test to avail the opportunity of learning from it. At this time, I'd like to hand over to Patty McGuire, the program manager of the SetCap program, to talk about the program and also information technology initiatives. Patty?
Okay, thanks, Autry. As Autry said, I'm Patty McGuire, the new program manager for the Census Enterprise Data Collection and Processing Program, also known as SetCap. I started in this job just a couple weeks ago, and I already get to talk about it at a 2020 PMR. But Mandy Williams left the Census Bureau for a new opportunity, so I agreed to take on this new effort. Before I begin my presentation, Lisa asked me to just tell you a little bit about my background, so that maybe you can understand why I decided to take on this new challenge. So I actually started here at the Bureau in 1987. During the 1990 census, I worked in the field division. I wrote training for the IT staff in the field offices. I worked on the help desk. I actually spent time in the New York region during the non-response follow-up field operation. I left Decennial for a few years. I worked in the Demographic Surveys division on the consumer expenditure surveys. And then in 1998, I rejoined Decennial. And since then, I worked on several of the major IT acquisitions in support of the 2000 and the 2010 census. And most recently, I was working on the system engineering, the award of the system engineering and integration contracts here at the Bureau, and on IT readiness for 2020. So in case you lost count, 2020 is my fourth census. I really have loved each one. I'm very thankful for those experiences and getting to see what my colleagues and I accomplished with each one. And It's actually a running joke with some of the folks at this table that a census promotional video has brought me to tears. So at a couple meetings. So it's I really do like what I do, and I'm excited about this opportunity. And of course, now I just caught something off the table. So today I'm going to talk to you about CEDCAP, and it's a bureau-wide effort to transform the systems we use for data collection and processing on our censuses and surveys. But I'm also going to talk to you about a few of the other enterprise IT efforts going on in support of the 2020 census around the infrastructure and around IT security. So the CEDCAP program is managed within the IT Directorate in partnership with the other directorates impacted by this initiative. The Census Bureau, as you've heard, is committed to IT shared services as a means to reduce duplication and single-use solutions for our key operations and technologies. CEDCAP is just one example of several IT shared service initiatives we have going on. Oh, a little closer, geez, okay. It consists of a group of projects that either link directly to the capabilities we need for data collection, or it provides the enabling solutions that support these systems. I accepted this position because I understand how critical its success is to the success of the 2020 census and to the other programs here at the Bureau. When Autry talked about the solution architecture for the 2020 census, several of the systems he referenced are within the CEDCAP portfolio, such as the enabling solutions of CAFE and COMET, which facilitate the questionnaire design. He also mentioned that some CEDCAP solutions were provided for the 2015 census test, including Mojo for control of the field work and iCade for paper capture. A few CEDCAP enabling solutions will be used for the first time in the 2016 census test. For example, CARDS will provide the survey response processing, and MOX will provide centralized operational analysis and control. So Autry went into a little bit more detail on some of the CEDCAP solutions that will be used for the 2016 test in his slides. A major goal of CEDCAP is to reduce duplicative systems used for data collection and processing across the Census Bureau. The current state picture shown here lists all the systems that support data collection and processing before CEDCAP began. One takeaway from this picture is that we have many different systems providing some of the same capabilities throughout the Census Bureau, especially for data collection. The end state picture for CEDCAP provides a view of the IT shared services that will eventually be used for the decennial, the demographic, and the economic censuses and surveys here at the Census Bureau. The CEDCAP Program Management Office maintains solution architecture and transition plan documentation that describes the roadmap to go from the current state to the end state. Besides deploying solutions to support our decennial economic and demographic programs, CEDCAP is partnering with these programs on build-buy decision-making for the CEDCAP enterprise solutions. As Autry mentioned, we are working with Carnegie Mellon on this decision-making process. We are analyzing existing technologies, including those that have been developed internally, and COTS software, and looking to minimize the custom development and one-off solutions, such as those that resulted in the large dollar IT acquisitions in the previous censuses. While we're looking to deliver preliminary analysis and decision-making by the end of March, we need to ensure that we continue our analysis on our research as technology and the public's use of technology changes. We also need to ensure that these initial system-level decisions integrate together and support CEDCAP's vision as a whole and those of the other programs. Besides CEDCAP, the IT Directorate has other enterprise IT initiatives underway in support of the 2020 census. The 2016 census test is the first time we will use cloud solution to support the census test. We awarded the Enterprise Solutions Framework contract for the cloud this past August, and then the first delivery order off that contract in September. The first delivery order will provide the cloud infrastructure to support the systems for internet data collection and real-time non-ID processing for the 2016 Census Test. Going forward, a major focus of the cloud team is to not only support enterprise solutions across the Bureau, but to also really address the critical scalability needed for the 2020 census. Another shared service initiative in the IT Directorate is the provision of enterprise development and test tools and environments for both SEDCAP and non-SEDCAP systems. As with SEDCAP, the goal of this effort is to minimize duplication and one-off solutions. We also want to standardize our approach to testing and release of systems in production throughout the Census Bureau. For example, just for the 2020 census, each of our major IT contractors stood up their own development and test environments at their facilities. Plus, we had development and test environments here at headquarters. So we want to minimize this duplication and the challenges that come with that complexity. Finally, while this slide specifically discusses enterprise development and test environments, we're also focusing similar efforts on our staging and our production environments. The last enterprise IT shared service initiative today I'll discuss is the IT Directorate's work with the 2020 Census Program on IT security. That partnership began with a security engineer from the Office of Information Security working on the 2020 census full-time as part of their system engineering and integration team. In fact, the IT Directorate has 3 key technical staff on the 2020 census system engineering and integration team, and Atri recognized them a little earlier, and it was nice to see when they stood up, they were actually all sitting together. So it's demonstration of that partnership. In addition to the security engineer, other IT Directorate staff, including the security staff, are working with the 2020 staff and the solution providers to ensure deployed solutions are designed and developed to meet federal security requirements and have the needed authority to operate. Our focus is on continuous monitoring and ongoing cybersecurity research and training. They are critical to protecting our systems and our data, and as Audrey mentioned, we take that very seriously. I've highlighted for you today just a small portion of the IT Directorate's work to deploy IT solutions in support of the 2020 census. The goal of this work, and my work, and everyone's here, is to reduce, ensure success, but also to reduce the redundancies of one-off solutions and adopt new technology while maintaining secure systems and information. So I'm excited about my new opportunity, but no questions for me.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Autry, Deirdre, and Shireen. I think we're right on time. I'm amazed. So that was a lot of information for us to go over. We have some time for questions before we go back out and explore the technology a little bit. We're happy to take any questions that you all might have. And again, just as a reminder, please state your name and your affiliation before asking us the questions.
Tricia,
I was going to say I could start calling on people just randomly, but thank you, Tricia.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I have a few questions, but I don't want to ask too many at one sitting. But back on the BYOD, and you mentioned that clearly you wanted to minimize risk. What were the cost implications of that decision?
Tricia, that's a good question. We recognize that device as a service will cost slightly more than BYOD. However, we are planning to learn much more about this as we issue our request for information as related to device as a service in the spring of this year.
As far as Puerto Rico is concerned, and I'm not diminishing, my question doesn't imply some kind of diminished importance of that, but is it such a specific instance of like geography, the address structure and so on, but are you able to generalize to other things that will benefit from the work you're doing in Puerto Rico?
I think a little bit of both is the answer to your question. Originally, we intended to include Puerto Rico as part of the 2017 census test, but as I mentioned earlier, because we did not have the opportunity to update the frame since 2010, we recognized that it would be more valuable to spend that time now doing so, and we needed that time to focus specifically on Puerto Rico. So we pulled it from the 2017 census test. We thought, let's build the frame, let's do a good job here, instead of pushing it out for address canvassing in the fall of this year.
On one of the diagrams you had, that Patty, I know you don't want any questions, but you had under the layers for your end state, you had administrative records. But I didn't see any maps or addresses, so I was kind of curious about that. And while I'm on the topic of administrative records, an earlier diagram that Autry presented had a huge box for administrative records when it referred to contact information and address enhancement, and a very small box for ARMS, the administrative records modeling. And I didn't see any lines in between them. So my question has to do with geography, administrative records, and specifically for administrative records, what kind of cohesive design is envisioned at this point?
Thank you for the question. So the master address file and TIGER, Topologically Integrated Geographic and Encoding and Referencing System, is our geospatial database. And the question regarding whether it belongs here in the diagram or what the situation is for the addresses, we consider MAF-TIGER as a system that will continue to serve the purpose of geospatial data provisioning for censuses and surveys. The set cap assessment of what systems have to be built are for enterprise solutions and enterprise purposes that are beyond what MAF-TIGER does. So MAF-TIGER will continue to exist, and we will continue to update it as needed. Now, regarding the administrative records, as I mentioned, for 2020, we are working on a system called PERSYS, which would host the production environment. It will be like the production environment for hosting administrative records. The provisioning of PERSYS is for the supply of the administrative records for use in modeling, in enhancing address data, in supplementing address data, and also in using for the purposes of non-response follow-up. That environment is different than what happens as part of what I depicted as ARMS. We showed it basically because the case is not, the system that typically would be used in 2020 for the modeling is not available yet. But the flow of data through a service would be to all the systems that need to consume the administrative records, and that would be provisioned as part of PERSYS. I hope I answered your question.
I don't want to interrupt Trish. Hi, Ty Mitchell from Government Accountability Office. Patty, welcome back. My recollection of your biography included a management role with the DRIS contract that came in under budget. Welcome back, and it's good to see you up there. I'm not going to ask you questions now, but I'm sure we'll have plenty for you later. I know you had a heavy hand in some of the early 2020 planning that was done early on, a lot of the program management stuff, so it's good to see you up there. A couple questions, though. Deirdre, you made reference to the detailed decision inventory tracking. Just curious, what linkage is there or is planned for putting that in with the master activity schedule, which in theory tracks decisions also?
Good question, because we actually had this conversation in our ADC meeting today. We have this detailed decision inventory. I can show you an example of it here. It contains all 350 of the decisions that are included in the operational plan. It contains much more information than we have in the operational plan. It shows which tests we conducted as related to each question, when we made the decision, who made that decision, so on and so forth. In many instances, these questions are already depicted as a milestone or an activity in one of our census test schedules or in the baseline schedule. If they're not, we're going to be going through and adding to the 2020 census baseline schedule through the end of this fiscal year. As Shireen mentioned, right now our focus is getting the 2018 end-to-end schedule done.
Okay. And just to be clear, the idea is the ones that will be included will be the ones for this year. I'm sorry, it's not that at the end of this fiscal year you'll have all of the decisions in. You're just going to get in the decisions that are being made this year. Did I understand you correctly?
Where appropriate, we're going to add as many as we can.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Second question, I might have misunderstood. At one point, I think you said something like it'll be important throughout the tests to use same procedures, et cetera, and you give an example of listing, how you list, and that kind of thing. And I mean, it sounds like a nice application of scientific method, controlling across treatment, controlling for treatment across the test. But I just want to know, was there? I mean, you threw that sentence in there. Is there something else going on? Is there some meta plan for rolling up across those tests, this implicit test of something else or something? Is anything else going on there?
We really wanted to be mindful of the fact that we go out at different times and conduct very similar operations. We're continually updating our address list. We're using Lima right now as part of our current surveys. We're going to use a derivative of Lima for the upcoming tests and for the 2020 census. We didn't want to alter our procedures from one operation to the next. You should use a very simple, similar procedure to conduct address listing every time you're out there.
Just to add to what Deirdre says and said to bring us back even contextually, even back prior to that, what Deirdre's talking about, and I completely agree with it, it's the extension of the way we re-looked at the 34 operations that make up the census. We intentionally combined operations for this census into a single operation that were similar in the past, but we might have executed differently. So some of what we're saying is that reminder to ourselves and to our stakeholders about how we're looking to execute it. Carol.
Carol Rice with the IAG's office. I want to just tag on to one of Ty's questions about the decision inventory and the decisions. In addition to tying it into this schedule, the master activity schedule, how are you tying it into the memorandum series? Because I know you've issued one decision, but I noticed you've made 168. I know some of them you said were in the operational plan, but just where are you tying in that?
That's a harder question to answer, which is why everyone looked to me, so it's very exciting. It's a great question, but slightly harder. So we did roll out the release of our decision memorandum series the end of December, and the first decision memo in the decision memo series is the background on what constitutes a decision memo, which leads to a very open process for us making those determinations on when something warrants an external decision memo or whether something is an internal decision that we've made and we're going to update it within our decision inventory. With that said, we're working now on developing a little bit fuller guidance as part of our communication efforts and our communication strategy on what those decision points would be. Even with that as background, I also would point out that when we rolled out the operational plan, we made a commitment that this is a living document and that we would be continuing to revise the operational plan at least on an annual basis. Hand in hand with those updates of the operational plan will be a listing of those decisions that have been made. So whether something is significant enough to, like the device as a service, to warrant an independent decision memo, or whether it's a smaller decision point that we've made that we needed for our internal documentation to keep the train on the track, they will all be externally available in some format within a period of time. Other questions? Jordan's thinking. Nope, okay. If we don't have other questions, that gives us more time for the technology demo. So I would encourage folks, we'll take our break at this point. I would encourage folks, let's see what time it is. It's 2:30. Why don't we plan to come back at about 5 of 3? and we'll get started right on time then. It'll give us a little more time to look at the technology and to enjoy that. And we'll start at 5 minutes before 3. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in a few minutes.